Hey, welcome everyone to I So Appreciate You, an honest, raw, and sometimes funny podcast about work, community, life, and all the other stuff we juggle. Hi, I'm Pahoua.
And I'm Nadege, and we're colleagues at the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation. In addition to that, we're friends. And so when we talk, our conversations can run the gamut. We can start talking about board meetings and governance procedures. We can get into mother-daughter dynamics, and then we can be like, where are we going to dinner tonight?
I prefer that conversation. And so we thought that maybe some of you would like to join us in conversation. So here we are with I So Appreciate You.
Why this podcast and why now? I mean, if I'm honest, I'm kind of wondering that too. Pahoua, you're kind of the one who dragged me into this. So how did we get here?
And since I didn't want to do a podcast alone, I asked you to join me because we were already having a bunch of conversations about work, family, and life. And it just seemed like a natural thing that you and I might do and that we might want to share these conversations more broadly. And guess what? You didn't say no.
I really need to work on that, I think. But, you talk about work, and it makes me think of our foundation values. And one of my favorites, actually, is we innovate and learn. And my favorite part of that is we take risks, embrace innovation, and commit to learning from both mistakes and successes.
I love the mistake part.
So do I. And I'd like to kind of lean in on that and say, so here we are. Like, if this works, amazing.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, I think we're definitely going to learn some things.
That's why I'm here. So while there are a million podcasts, we thought a conversation between two women of color, navigating work and life in Minnesota and the ever elusive finding a balance was not being had enough. Plus, we just wanted to be us. We plan on having some of the guests that we've been long wanting to talk to, and we've been wanting to meet and have them join us in conversation too.
Okay, but before we start talking about guests, maybe we should talk about ourselves a little bit since, we're the co-hosts and they're going to get to hear our voice every week.
I suppose that's a good place to start.
Okay, so I thought about this. Like, what do I say about myself that doesn't make me feel all cringy? So I'm actually just going to focus on my Twitter bio because it's nice and short and it gets to the point.
Okay.
So it says, Ops and Learning SVP plus former lawyer plus performing arts enthusiast plus occasional fashionista.
More than occasional, actually.
Plus gluten-free foodie plus changing narratives, she, her, hers. And, for like whatever number of characters that is, it's mostly right. Like, I was a college dance major who then worked in arts administration and then decided to be a lawyer, and now I'm in philanthropy. So I've got this crazy background that sometimes makes absolutely no sense. And I think one of the things that people might learn as they keep listening is I'm low-key one of the silliest people you will ever meet.
You are that, and I hope that comes through in this podcast. So first of all, I'm impressed that you got all this in the character limit that Twitter allows for your bio. I suppose I can go a little bit there too myself. And in my Twitter bio, you'll see that I have community up there. I have sports up there because I think what people might not know is that I'm a huge Twins fan. I'm also a Boston Red Sox fan. It's where I went for my honeymoon. Yes, indeed.
Oh, wow. Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah. My husband and my name were up in License Center Field at Fenway. So I think that, so you'll see in my Twitter feed and in my Twitter bio that you'll see things coming through about sports right now. We're almost going to go into World Series season. And I'm also in a women's fantasy football league. But okay, enough about that. I've been in nonprofit my entire career. I've worked in nonprofits of all sizes, most recently at a very small public policy organization based in St. Paul. And I'm fairly new to the foundation, so it's only been a year and a half currently. And I've been loving working there and working alongside you, Nadege.
It's crazy that we've only been colleagues for about a year and a half because I feel like I've known you forever.
For a long time.
Well, in addition to talking about ourselves, we're also going to explore many topics relevant to work and life. For example, we're going to talk about leadership, health and wellness, crazy things we've read.
Lots.
Yeah. Local events, people who are in the news, people who we think should be in the news.
And maybe people who shouldn't be in the news.
Well, yeah, there's that too. And, maybe I can get you to share some recipes with folks.
Yeah, if we could swap.
And did we mention that we're going to invite a lot of like awesome people to join us?
And I think you did, but it's worth mentioning again that I'm really excited about our future episodes where, we'll have special guests joining us. Hey, Nadege, what's with the name? I so appreciate you.
I mean, why do you act like I'm the one responsible for it?
Because you actually did come up with it.
Okay, fair. So when we were starting to think about this, you and I went back and forth about a bunch of names, and it was super hard because real talk, all the good names were already taken.
Every name we wanted was already taken.
Was already a podcast that already seemed great.
Yeah.
And some of the ideas were like a little too cute for us. I mean, like, we're cute, but we're not cutesy.
No, not cutesy.
Right. And then other things just didn't feel right. Like, they didn't feel like us at all.
Yeah.
So one night, it was actually late at night because some of the best random thoughts come to me late at night.
Yeah.
I started searching through our text history and I noticed a pattern.
She does this, you guys.
Yeah, I'm a weirdo. But the search function is very useful. And what I noticed is that we express genuine appreciation for each other on a pretty routine basis.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up the screenshot of this text.
You do not have the actual text I sent you.
I actually have the text. So it's like 10:46, and a text comes through from you, and it says, "Hey, Pahoua, I actually went through our, we've been struggling to find a name for this podcast." And you're like, I just went back in the history. And one thing, a phrase that kept coming up in our text history was that, "Hey, I appreciate you." And then I would say it, and you would say it, and it would just show up a bunch of times. And you said, "Why not?"
I so appreciate you.
For the name.
And I feel like as soon as I said that, you were like, yes, or the exclamation point.
Well, it just felt right. It just felt like, that actually encompassed not only the work that we do at the foundation, our appreciation for each other, but it's the tone we wanted to strike with this podcast. We wanted it to be hopeful, and we wanted it to be open enough in the name that we can talk about anything under the sun.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that's enough about us for now.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into what we're going to talk about today, which is professionalism. I So Appreciate You is brought to you by the St. Paul in Minnesota Foundation. With roots in St. Paul, we are Minnesota's largest community foundation and the partner of choice for thousands of donors, nonprofits, and community organizations. The foundation aspires to create an equitable, just, and vibrant Minnesota where all communities and people thrive by inspiring generosity, advocating for equity, and investing in community-led solutions. Visit spmcf.org to learn more. Welcome back, everyone. Hey, Pahoua.
Yeah.
One of the first conversations we had as colleagues was about professionalism. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I think I can't remember if you brought it up or I brought it up, but I think that where we kind of went in that conversation was, how have you and I shown up in a professional way at work? And how has that evolved when we are now working with and supervising younger people who are coming up? And they're actually trying to break away from what we traditionally view as professional. I think I remember that being the conversation that we were having.
I think it was. I think it was at a happy hour too.
Yeah.
See, all the questions.
All the questions.
But I remember that we recently talked about this again because of this nonsense that we have encountered in the social media universe.
Oh my God, it's a story that just won't die.
It will not die.
No. So what you're referring to is earlier this summer, there was a really ridiculous thread. I think it was on Twitter, but I think it was everywhere on social media about the bathing habits, or actually lack of bathing habits, by celebrities like Mila Kunis, Ashton Kutcher, and Jake Gyllenhaal also got in the mix. And it was about how they were proud, or at least not embarrassed, to admit that they don't bathe. something about waiting for the stink to happen. And I remember seeing this and thinking, okay, this is super silly. Why am I even reading this tweet? And I really didn't think much more about it. And I certainly wasn't going to bring it up with you.
Well, okay, I just want to point out that as ridiculous as it was, then other celebrities started tweeting about or talking on Instagram about how many showers they take a day. Like, that's how crazy this conversation got.
Well, okay, so now you're going to know who's, what celebrities I follow and don't follow, or appreciate and don't appreciate, because when they were talking about it, I was like, yeah, okay, good for you that you don't want to take a bath. But I'm a fan and you're a fan of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
Absolutely.
And then he got in the mix. So then he tweeted that, hey, I'm not like those folks. I actually bathe, and not only bathe, but I shower multiple times a day because he works out all the time.
Yeah, at least 3 times a day, I think he said. And it just makes me wonder, this is a fun fact about me because I've been a fan of his for a very long time, how many times he bathed when he was an active wrestler in the WWE. Like, for instance, the time I actually went to see him live.
You've seen him live?
I have.
I have not been in the same room with him. All right.
I mean, it was an arena and I was, in the nosebleeds.
Still, you were breathing the same air.
But I did get to see him jump out in the rings and say, can you smell what The Rock is cooking?
Yeah. Oh, my God. Okay, so then he got in the mix. And I was like, wait, why are we continuing to talk about this? And then, right after that, I remember seeing an essay by Roxane Gay. And she weighed in on this. And I believe the headline of her essay was, Who Gets to Be Dirty? And at first I thought, okay, this topic was silly. But as I read her essay, it occurred to me that while showering per se wasn't something I thought a lot about, it was actually something that came up often in my household. So as a refugee, as an immigrant, as wanting to show up at church or at school or at work, I mean, my mom and my parents raised us to look a certain way so that we could, I don't know, these weren't the words they used, but maybe counter the narrative of what refugees look like. And so while it wasn't something I thought about, I kind of reflected on just how I was brought up and thinking there is no way my family, my mom, my dad, my brothers and sisters would have been proud today or then about how we didn't bathe.
Absolutely. I mean, my family would be mortified if I was, blasting all over social media that I felt super comfortable not taking a shower, because that certainly is not presentable.
Yeah. So that raised the question to, Roxane Gay's point, who gets to be dirty? And I think that also plays into this professionalism conversation that you and I have had, because we've talked about the ways in which we need to present ourselves. And this has to do with the word choices we use, knowing, Robert's rules, but it's also about the clothes we wear.
Yep.
The hair we keep.
Absolutely.
And I know that, in the conversation that you and I had way back when, you talked about your experience working in a law firm when you were a practicing attorney. And, I think you should share that story about how you felt, or maybe the requirement you felt was needed there in that space.
Yeah. So, way back when I was not even yet a baby lawyer, I was just a lawyer in a baby lawyer in training. I was starting to do my interviews to try to get a summer internship. And I remember our career services office gave tips and tricks about what to do to be successful, and some of them included attire.
Right.
And so the professional attire was a black or navy suit. And I don't remember if it was written on the paper or said aloud, skirts for women.
Yeah.
And I just thought, first of all, I don't know why I was becoming a lawyer, because I literally hate suits. But
I love suits.
That wasn't my vibe. If I got to go sit in these interviews, which were, by the way, like 4-hour events, because you met with 6 partners and then you went to lunch, I was like, I need to be comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so I had stumbled onto this really super cute black and pink pinstripe suit with 3/4 sleeves.
I like it. Very
much not a traditional suit. But I decided, I'm just going to do it. Like, what are they going to do? Not hire me? Like, that's the alternative. I get the job. I don't get the job.
Right.
And so I went to these interviews, and interview after interview, I got so many compliments on the suit by other female attorneys. And I think that it made me show up in a kind of way. But the reality is, like, if somebody from my career services had probably seen me on the way out, they would have been like, is that what you're wearing?
Yeah.
And why did it matter? Like, I looked fine. I looked appropriate, but
Why
apparently...
do you think they were worried? Why would they pull you aside?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to that professionalism thing. And I actually want to stop at this moment and like unpack that a little bit. So, you know me, I'm kind of a dork. So I actually looked up professionalism.
Okay.
Because we keep kind of talking about it, and I was trying to decide, is this one of those you know it when you see it, or is there actually a definition? And so I'm going to read what Merriam-Webster says about professionalism.
She is a dork, guys. Okay, go ahead.
It is the conduct, aims, or qualities that characterize or mark a profession or professional person. Now...
Okay, that's real clear.
Yeah, really, I mean, I kind of want to WTF this moment right here, because you are defining professionalism by saying that it's stuff that characterize a profession or professional person. Okay, but like what stuff? Who gets to decide the stuff? Who's in charge? Like who decides what's professional?
And this is, so I've come up against this so many times about, like, that definition doesn't really tell you anything. And even when we, let's say, prescribe something like, hey, show up in business casual, or show up in business or business casual, what does that actually mean? So, a couple of years ago, I remember being in the audience listening to former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick speak. And he, for those of you who don't know, he grew up in the south side of Chicago. And I think it was around age 14, he got this amazing opportunity to go and study at Milton Academy, fancy, I think it's a boarding school in Massachusetts. And he shared this story about getting the clothing list, right? So I think, we're all kind of, families are going back to school, they're already in school now, but, you get the supplies list, you get the clothing list.
Right. Absolutely.
And you make sure that you have what you need to
check everything off. You buy the things on the list.
That's right. And one of the items was a blue jacket. And so his grandparents, who he's living with or were raising him, like they splurged and got him this blue jacket, right? So he shows up at school at Milton Academy, and everyone is in their blue blazer. But you guys, in Southside Chicago, a blue jacket means windbreaker. So he's in this windbreaker, blue windbreaker, amongst a sea of blue blazers. So this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes we are not prescriptive enough, and we assume that people know what we're talking about. And this is the kind of stuff that I think really takes up space in my head at one time, and in the heads of young people who are trying to break into their first jobs. Or when I was mentoring students who are working up at the Capitol, they would come to me and say, hey, I know that you've spelled out these are the things that we need to wear, but what does that actually mean?
Right.
And to not know that, to show up in a windbreaker, may cause people to think that you don't know. Well, obviously it outs you, right? That you don't know. You don't know the unspoken code.
Right. You don't know the language.
Right.
I mean, I think that, I stumbled across an article about bias in professionalism in the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And it was really fascinating as they kind of, walk through all of these unspoken categories that make up what is or isn't professional.
Yeah.
We've got speech, your accents, your word choice might be something that deems you professional or not.
Yeah.
Your hairstyle, your attire. I'm going to get back to hairstyle in a minute. How you're scrutinized and your attitude. But the thing is, kind of like that definition I read, there's no clear rule.
No.
Like nobody has ever walked into a job, gotten a piece of paper that has said, here we arrive promptly at 7:31. and you sit at your desk for the next 3 hours. And while you're sitting at the desk, you are wearing a 3-piece blah, blah, blah with it. Like nobody gets that prescriptive a detail. You're just supposed to somehow show up on your first day with no experience and know all of these unspoken rules.
That's right. And I think this is why it's come up again now as we are supervisors to say, do we perpetuate that? Should we keep that going? Or are we in a position to be more open? And then how do we even feel about that? Right?
Well, how do we even know the difference? I mean, the reality is we've both had long professional careers to this point. So it's almost like it's in our blood.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about the fact that there have to be in certain states crown acts to protect like Black women's ability to have natural hair in the workplace. And first of all, that's insane.
Yeah.
But then I think back to the start of my professional career. It was always straight. It was always pressed.
Yeah.
And it never occurred to me to show up in the office natural because natural would not have been professional.
That's crazy.
It feels crazy,
Yeah.
but the reality is it's only now that we actually even have to make laws about this. So some people don't have to go put products and chemical and damage their natural hair state just to show up in a way that is quote unquote professional and actually have the chances for advancement and movement that their expertise and their, education ought to demand, but the perceived ability because of how they look or how they dress doesn't allow.
So, I mean, where should we take this? I mean, how do we help the listeners? What do we do with this? Because I think that you and I are in positions where we are hiring people. And I would like to think that given the conversations we have had and are having today, that hopefully listeners are listening and those who are in positions where you're hiring, like just think about that. Just think about the space that people might be reserving for, just the quiet worry about how they need to show up at the place where you work. And as you think about new hires coming in or mentoring younger people, like how do you just proactively put that out there so that they don't have to guess?
I think it's really about thinking what is actually important for this job.
Yes.
And I think the crazy thing is I think COVID has opened up a little bit of that for us.
Yeah.
Because
people are wearing sweatpants now underneath their desks.
Well, we don't even know. Mm-hmm. And it goes to show it probably didn't matter before.
Yeah. Maybe the lessons that we learned during the pandemic is that, sometimes I'll wear the same thing a couple of times a week and no one notices.
I mean, honestly, it seems less important in general. I mean, we think about what we know now is all of the work time pressures that were previously built into our regular day.
Yeah.
And I think that we can take advantage of this and not build them all back. I'd rather have people at the office doing great work, feeling efficient and feeling comfortable than making sure that they're rocking a pencil skirt and some ridiculous heels and pantyhose.
I may want to wear those though, but that's up to me.
But that's your choice.
Yes.
You can totally wear that. And I don't think that it takes away or it diminishes or elevates anyone's competence, what they're wearing.
Yeah. So should companies, I think take a closer look at your dress code. Do you need it for the work that you're doing?
Right. Is it specific to, safety? Is it specific to temperature? Is there a reason that you are requiring people to show up in a certain way? And if there isn't, maybe reevaluate where you're coming from with that.
Or how about listen to your employees? See what they would like. Start by listening. All right. We could probably keep going talking about this for hours, but we've got to leave something for our next episode.
Thank you for listening to I So Appreciate You. You can find us on Facebook at I So Appreciate You Podcast and on Twitter and Instagram at So Appreciate You.
We'd also appreciate you taking a moment to leave us a review. And if you like our show, be sure to follow I So Appreciate You on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to us right now.
Have a question or a topic suggestion? Email us at podcast@spmcf.org. Thank you for listening to I So Appreciate You.
I have a dream that one day we'll live live in a world where they don't judge you by the color of your skin.
Every year, the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation recognizes anti-racism activists in Minnesota who challenge absent and harmful narratives on race and push for justice and equity through the Facing Race Awards. The story of this year's winners, Victoria McWayne Creek, King Demetrius Pendleton, Valerie Shirley, and Wookie Wea, premiered just last week and is available to watch on facingrace.org. Go check it out, facingrace.org.
We all breathe and bleed the same. At the end of the